welcome to Fox 29's News Now on this Wednesday morning. We're going to get started with some local news for you. U.S. authorities seized 33,000 pounds or 15,000 kilograms of cocaine from a ship at Philadelphia's port in what they described as one of the largest drug busts in American history. Fox 29's Steve Keeley filed this report.
It's the newest top attraction on the Philadelphia Things to See list. Whether you're on a bicycle here on the South Jersey port side to get a clear shot of the ship, or even got a closer shot through a pleasure craft pulling right up alongside on the Delaware River, right in the shadow of the Walt Whitman Bridge. In the city where much of this country's history was made, modern history made here this week. On a ship that holds 9,900 containers, 7 of them had 16 tons of cocaine hidden in them, showing how amazing federal authorities and inspectors were to find it on this big ship among the thousands of containers on it. Cocaine that had no intention of being unloaded off ship and destined for the streets of Philadelphia, but instead headed for Europe after a pit stop in Philly that became a long illegal layover. Many of the crew members not leaving when this ship eventually does. Through the arrest affidavit, we learned the ship's first mate confessed to leading this onboard smuggling operation. He and others agreed for $50,000 each to bring it aboard at sea in 2 deliveries from smaller boats from Peru to Panama. A 6-boat delivery first, then a later 8-boat delivery up the port side using the ship's crane to hoist it up. Some crew members out at sea put on ski masks to try and disguise themselves from the onboard ship surveillance cameras. The confession details that new seals were obtained and then put on the containers after the originals were broken to stash the coke inside the legal, legit cargo. The ship docked at 5 a.m. Monday here in Philadelphia, and 12 hours later the coke was discovered. And drug-sniffing canines probably should have started smelling the stuff even before they got off 95 and out of their vehicles. Since a check with experts on the internet, you learn that a pound of pure cocaine yields 3 pounds of product to be sold on the street after it's cut. And selling at $136,000 a pound, you do the math, 33,000 pounds originally, and those 16 tons translates into 99,000 pounds to be sold. And at $136,000 at the going rate for cocaine on the street, that translates into a $4.5 billion street value. In Gloucester City, Steve Keeley, Fox 29 News.
And more in local news this morning. Cases of infection from the flesh-eating bacteria Vibrio are on the rise in coastal regions where the bacteria are not normally found, and a team of researchers hailing from New Jersey and Pennsylvania believe it has to do with rising ocean temperatures. Fox 29's Lauren Johnson filed this report.
Absolutely, and the doctors and researchers we're now hearing from this week say it's climate change. One of those conversations that sometimes gets political, but for doctors there, they say it's really a matter of life and death. And it happened to come to their attention because people started rushing into the emergency room after spending some time in the Delaware Bay. One man who fell victim, as you mentioned, Angel Perez, was crabbing right here in the Maurice River in Millville. A day later, he was in really bad shape. Leg was swollen. The meds he got from urgent care weren't working. He ended up at Cooper in Camden, where doctors say the delay in getting there caused the bacteria to worsen. Eventually, all of his limbs were amputated. That was last summer, and he wasn't the only one. Between 2017 and 2018, doctors at Camden saw 5 cases come through the hospital, all of the patients with very similar stories. Now, research has led them to release their findings in a new study on Monday. In it, they say rising water temperatures could be to blame.
That's true, yeah. It's got a lot warmer. It's hot in the summertime, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and where the ocean's a little cool, it's always hot here. Yeah, it's always been warmer than the ocean, but not this warm. It's climate change or something. Something's going on.
Well, the bacteria known technically as Vibrio vulnificus occurs in two ways in the cases they studied. Wound infections happen through breaks in the skin when people come in contact with the water, and the intestinal infections occur after the consumption of seafood. Either route can lead to bloodstream infections, and the mortality rate is very high. Researchers are now asking doctors to be on high alert when they see outdoorsmen coming into hospitals with rare conditions and maybe things they've never seen before. And anyone who loves fishing and maybe crabbing in South Jersey or Delaware are encouraged to be extremely careful, especially with the summer months here.
And considering those summer months, is the water safe? Cases of the flesh-eating bacteria are increasing in the Delaware Bay. What you need to know before you go in the water.
Thanks, Bob. 7:32 now.
Well, a new study shows cases involving flesh-eating bacteria are on the rise in the Delaware Bay. So this is something we definitely want to look into because you can get it in a different ways, but we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about a man named Angel Perez, who was crabbing in the Maurice River last July. You may remember him because we talked to his family here on the show. That river is connected to the Delaware Bay. His leg was swollen and painful, and he eventually ended up in Cooper Medical Hospital in Camden, where parts of his arms and both legs had to be amputated below the knees. The bacteria is called Vibrio vulnificus, and researchers believe the warmer weather is creating conditions for this bacteria to flourish in our area. And people who frequent the Delaware Bay, they are concerned.
It's alarming, you know. I'm glad I know now.
I'm not going to put my hands in the water. I'm wear gloves, handle the fish a little more carefully.
This bacteria is more dangerous for people with pre-existing conditions. In Perez's case, his immune system was already compromised by Parkinson's disease.
Oh, okay. Dr. Catherine Doctor is here. We'll talk about your last name, Doctor, a little bit later on. So we get that all right? Why do we call it flesh-eating bacteria?
So when the bacteria gets into the skin, it causes damage rapidly, and it moves very quickly. And it can also go deep into the tissues.
So the skin is actually disintegrating or disappearing?
I wouldn't call it disintegrating or disappearing. I think eating is a little bit of a overreach. It just causes a lot of skin death, and the infection moves very quickly.
Well, what are some of the symptoms? Because in Mr. Perez's case that we were just talking about, part of the reason why they had to amputate his legs and part of his arms was because of the fact that it took him a while to get to the hospital where they could figure out what was going on. So how do you know? Can you know right away if you have it?
In some people, the infection moves very fast. So if you sustain a break in the skin and you see it starts to look infected, then you should go seek medical attention.
So if it's just red or blisters?
Yeah, and if you've had the correct exposure. So exposures are salty, warm water, such as a bay, as well as eating raw or undercooked shellfish.
Is it mostly in more still water? Because we're showing a coastline here with waves.
It's in brackish water, so where fresh water meets ocean water.
In the bay?
Yeah.
In the bay?
Yeah.
Okay, we keep saying pre-existing conditions would make you susceptible to this.
So,
conditions like what?
So any type of liver disease, also diabetes, or if you're immunocompromised in some way, so if you have if you're taking a drug that affects your immune system.
Like an antibiotic? Or
no, like a steroid, or if you have cancer and chemotherapy, or if you've had a transplant, all of those conditions can
we want to
suppress your
know
immune system.
how not to get it.
Right. Does this mean we should avoid going in the bay?
No, absolutely not. So I grew up in North Jersey. I've gone to the shore all my life, and I plan to continue to go.
Right,
so I don't want anybody to avoid the shore. This is not meant to be alarmist. To protect yourself, I would avoid consuming raw or undercooked shellfish. And as I said, if you sustain a cut or a break in the skin and it starts to look red, you should seek medical attention.
So if you have a break in the skin, like you've hurt yourself, don't go into that brackish water.
Correct. If you have a open wound, I wouldn't go crabbing.
But when it comes to eating shellfish, is that like when you go to restaurants we should stop, or you're just saying if you are getting it yourself?
I was sucking down some oysters the other night.
I would include all raw or undercooked shellfish.
What?
And do we have to ask where it's from, or no? You're just saying don't.
I'm saying to decrease the risk, then I would avoid raw or undercooked shellfish.
And it's on you to, yeah.
Really? I like raw fish. Doctor?
Like thinking of sushi and everything else?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not all raw fish and sushi is shellfish, so.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
Okay.
And we're going to make a shift here and move to Washington, D.C., where the House of Representatives is holding a hearing on the Boeing 737 MAX plane. Stay with us.
Challenge the certification process. How does the certification process need to adapt to the fact that we're becoming more reliant upon technology to ensure, once again, that we're staying alive, that we're paying attention to what's happening? Look, at the end of the day, I'm going to circle back to where I started. This is about safety and it's about people. And there have been many efforts that we've seen over the past few months to make this a partisan effort. And I cannot disagree with that more. I think it's a huge mistake to do that. There's nothing that's partisan about this. Every single one of us that are here today, in this room, every one of us that's on this dais, we all need to stay singularly focused on the fact this is about safety and people. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this second hearing today, and looking forward to the witnesses. I do want to make note, we have a markup in another committee, 4 bills that are very much related to the state that I represent, and I'm going to have to run in and out. I think we have 80 amendments over there. So yield back.
Thank you, Representative Graves. And it's fair for you to make sure you make your votes in your markup. We appreciate that. But before I turn to Chair DeFazio for an opening statement, I just ask unanimous consent following be entered in the hearing of today's record of today's hearing, a June 12 letter from Ms. Nadia Milleron and Mr. Michael Stumo to Chair DeFazio, and the written testimony from the Association of Professional Flight Attendants. Hearing no objections, so ordered. And with that, I'll turn to Chair DeFazio for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, of course, our second hearing. I don't think we should be here today. I don't think 346 people should have died, and I believe that this was preventable. We have family here today who lost a daughter, and we'll hear from them at a future meeting. But there are a lot of questions that still remain unanswered, and we're pressing forward with this as a very comprehensive investigation. A lot of it leads back to the organization delegation authority process, certification process, the question about the role of engineers in this process versus that of operators, pilots, and other safety professionals who work on those planes. It's inexplicable to me, and I asked in the first hearing, I asked the acting administrator, I said, is this a safety critical system, MCAS? And he said, yes. And my question then was, how could we allow a safety critical system with a single point of failure? We do not allow that in the aviation industry. Well, the answer from Boeing at an early meeting after Lion Air was, well, the pilots were the backup system. The pilots didn't know it existed. And the original system was relatively mild. 0.6 degrees of deflection, not repeated overrides of the pilot's command. And, that was in the manual. But then the Boeing engineers changed it to 2.5 degrees, repeated overriding the pilot's decision, and asked the FAA to take it out of the manual. Now that, to me, is shocking. It's in the first manual when it's a relatively mild system that kind of is similar to what they're proposing with their fix, except it will have 2 angle of attack sensors input and other modifications. So how could the FAA agree to that? Did they understand what it did? Did anybody understand what this would do? I don't think the implications were fully known. There have been 14 versions of this plane since '67. It has been an incredible workhorse airplane. I've flown on one, I'm sure, thousands of times. I've flown up 6 million miles since I've been in Congress. So many, many, many times. But at some point, you got to think there's a cutoff where this is a new plane and it's different than the one from 1967. And it shouldn't just be an amended type certificate. It has to go through recertification. Now, of course, that's a longer process. It's more expensive. It might require pilot retraining. And the question is, why didn't we get to that point with this plane? And that also goes for the longer term, looking at the certification ODA process. Further, we discovered that the disagree light was inoperable in many of the planes, the ones that hadn't bought the extra package, apparently inadvertently, according to engineers. But this was not reported to FAA for a year, and until it became public, Boeing had no intention of fixing that to 2020. Could that have played a role in helping to prevent these tragedies? Well, we'll never quite know that, will we? That's unacceptable. And we have been in touch with both Boeing itself and United Technologies Corporation, who designed that software, to ask for a timeline and some explanation of how they think that is a proper procedure. We're going to hear today from a number of people who are going to provide compelling testimony. I won't go through the list again. Others have mentioned it, but I want to thank you for being here today. We have now begun to receive substantial numbers of documents from both Boeing and the FAA, and I have the oversight staff and the aviation staff going through those documents, and we will, fully expect, at a future hearing, have the FAA back in and have Boeing into this committee once we have the documentation digested that we need to ask the meaningful, very pointed questions we will ask. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Chair DeFazio. Recognize Ranking Member of the Full Committee, Representative Graves of Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you and Ranking Republican Graves for having this hearing. And I also want to express my condolences to the families and friends of the accident victims. Today's hearing is going to focus on how to safely return the 737 MAX back to surface. And this process, it has to be careful, it has to be deliberative, and all involved have to be absolutely laser focused on safety. I believe everyone at the FAA and at Boeing understand that to do anything less than that is absolutely unacceptable. We owe it to all of those who tragically lost their lives to get this, to get it right. As this process moves forward, input from the stakeholders, both in the United States and around the world, is going to be very important. And today, the subcommittee is going to hear from some of those stakeholders. As many of you know, I'm extremely proud of our aviation system here in the United States, and much of that pride stems from how safe our system has been. And knowing how imperative it is that we maintain this record and reputation for that matter, I want to share some of my thoughts on safely ungrounding the 737 MAX. First, the FAA's process to certify the 737 MAX, to certify the fix on the MAX, it has to be and will be a very intensive process. The FAA is going to conduct technical and operational reviews and assessments, simulator and flight testing. There's going to be evaluations and reevaluations on top of that. And they're also going to share information with and consider the comments and recommendations from the stakeholders that are out there. And ultimately, I anticipate that the FAA is going to issue multiple notices and multiple directives and orders. In addition, the Technical Advisory Board of the TAB, and we'll hear a lot about that, with experts on there from the FAA, from the U.S. Air Force, from NASA, from the VOLPI, the National Transportation Systems Center. They're all going to conduct a parallel and an independent review, and the FAA is going to consider their recommendations in this process. Boeing is going to need to demonstrate compliance with safety regulations and with the FAA directives. U.S. airlines are also going to have to demonstrate compliance with all FAA directives, and they will need to implement the required training across their fleets. Internationally, each country is going to have to make its own ungrounding decision. And the FAA is going to share information, and they're going to provide assistance as it's requested. And I'm glad that the FAA is working with the international regulators towards finding consensus regarding the certification and return to service the 737 MAX. The second thing is the FAA is working with Boeing, they're working with the airlines, they're working with pilots and international regulators, and they're going to determine what training is going to be required, both prior to the ungrounding and as recurrent training obviously moves forward in this process. And I believe it is critically important that we avoid focusing primarily just on pilot training on the old MCAS system and what occurred in the two MAX accidents, because there is real concern that training to the old system could result in negative training by unintentionally introducing or reinforcing outdated information or inapplicable concepts which could actually decrease safety, and they could actually decrease safety. The third thing is, I think it's vitally important that we allow for the various investigations or reviews to run their full course before we take any legislative action. To act preemptively it's only going to be for optics. And for people to be able to say that we did something, that's what that would only be about, rather than solving what I think is an identifiable problem in our system. Aviation accidents rarely have one contributing factor. Those of us who fly, we know that. There's always a number of investigations, and there are a number of investigations that are looking at the certification of the 737 MAX. And if problems are found, I do believe that they have to be addressed. But in reading the preliminary accident reports, as well as obviously many others with a lot of flying experience, many have raised concerns with the pilot training, with pilot experience, with aircraft maintenance, and definitely with airline operations. And all of these issues have to be investigated and they have to be reviewed. To ignore any possible factor or to jump to any predetermined conclusions about those factors, it creates the risk of future accidents that could have been prevented by full and thorough investigations. And the final thing is we have to avoid politicizing our aviation system. Safety is what the core, it's absolutely at the core of what every pilot, every flight attendant, every air traffic controller, engineer, repairman, manufacturer, every inspector, every operator, and every regulator strives for each and every day. It's the reason why in the last decade here in the United States, there have been nearly 7 billion passengers on 90 million commercial flights with one fatality. That's a heck of a record for the FAA and the aviation community in the United States. It's a heck of a record to be very proud of. And certainly one loss of life is one too many, but that unprecedented safety record is due to the safety culture of the aviation industry, which includes a collaborative and non-punitive approach to certification and safety oversight. And we must uphold that strong safety culture and that reputation. And over the next few months, the FAA and Boeing are going to work hard at ensuring that the safe return of the 737 MAX, that it's safely returned to service. And their progress is obviously going to be very closely monitored, not only by this committee, but by the world, the entire world. But I can say without any hesitation that I believe that the acting administrator of the FAA, that I believe him when he said that the FAA will return the 737 MAX to service in the United States only when it determines, based on the facts and technical data, that it is safe to do so. Only then will it happen. So again, I want to thank you, Chairman, for having this hearing, and I would yield back the balance.
Thank you, Representative Graves. Want to now welcome our witnesses. I'm not going to read titles and biographies, but we'll have Sharon Pinkerton from A4A, Captain Dan Carey of Allied Pilots, Captain Chelsea Sullenberger, retired pilot, Sarah Nelson from the AFA-CWA, and Honorable Randy Babbitt, former Administrator, FAA. And recognize each of you for 5 minutes. Without objection, though, our witnesses' full statements will be included in the record. Since it has been made part of the record, we request you to limit your oral testimony to 5 minutes. And first, we'll recognize Sharon Pinkerton for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman DeFazio, Ranking Member Graves, Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves. Thank you for having this hearing today. My name is Sharon Pinkerton. I'm the Senior Vice President for Policy at Airlines for America. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today to talk about aviation safety. Nothing's more fundamental to this industry than a commitment to safety. You know, U.S. carriers have led the world in aviation safety for decades, and we are very proud of that record. But the events that are bringing us here today have humbled us. These are sobering tragedies, and as an industry, as Americans, as human beings, we mourn the lost lives on Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. I want to convey not just our condolences, but also our industry's commitment to support policies and actions that are going to help ensure the highest level of aviation safety. Our industry doesn't simply shrug off failures like this. We fixate on root and proximate causes in order to learn from what happened and take that knowledge to better ensure the safety of our passengers and crew. As an industry, we're constantly challenging ourselves to meet and exceed the highest levels of safety. It has to be said that travel on U.S. passenger carriers remains exceptionally safe. As the committee knows, because you've played a role in shaping this system, we've flown almost 8 billion people on 94 million flights over the last 10 years. And in that time, there was one fatality. And although that is too many, our record is remarkable. Commercial aviation remains the safest mode of transportation by a wide margin. But we cannot and we will not rest on the status quo. And that's our promise to you and to the families that are here. As you know, several authorities are still reviewing the 2 overseas accidents. It's important to allow those investigations to conclude before rendering final judgment. But we know from experience that there are usually several factors, not just one, that contribute to any accident. While we wait for the findings and recommendations, Boeing has taken responsibility and pledged to make improvements by updating the flight control software. Our response must be deliberate, rely on facts and data before we form recommendations, which is how the FAA is approaching these accidents. The FAA's safety and regulatory framework is the gold standard in the world, and our safety record is the proof of that. We have a culture of collaboration in aviation where everyone throughout the system, public and private employees, manufacturers, carriers, everyone is encouraged to speak up and speak out if they see a potential safety issue. The industry does work closely with the FAA, and we believe that a transparent and collaborative relationship is critical to making the safest aviation system in the world even safer. Our safety record is the result of deliberate and systemic improvements over many years. We've moved from an early 1990s very forensic approach, looking back to determine what happened, to a very proactive and predictive data-driven approach to determine that anticipates and prevents accidents before they occur. It was really in the mid-90s that the industry and the FAA started to rely more on data from the plane, data from our employees, data from the controllers. The Commercial Aviation Safety Team, or CAST, was formed to give all of the players, labor unions, operators in the FAA, manufacturers, a seat at the table to share information. And the 1996 FAA bill provided protection to entities to help create a safe environment for that information sharing. The Aviation Safety Information Analysis and Sharing Program, otherwise known as a SIAS, represents the overarching program that connects all of the FAA's safety programs and shares data from across those programs and uses that information to identify risk and develop mitigation strategies. What's extraordinary about how this industry approaches data sharing? It's unique to the aviation mode. Aviation data is not proprietary. We don't compete. We communicate and we collaborate when it comes to safety. With respect to the impact of the grounding of the MAX on passengers, there were 3 U.S. carriers that were operating the MAX when the aircraft was grounded in March. Those carriers immediately began reassigning existing resources to minimize disruption to passengers. Fortunately, carriers were able to accommodate over 99% of impacted travelers through rebooking and rerouting. Of course, the question still remains, when will the MAX be returned to service? And the answer is not before the FAA, working with our pilots, certifies that it's safe, and not before adequate training is performed. The FAA, working closely with our pilots unions, our technical experts,
international regulators, have to ask you to wrap up.
And Boeing, is engaging in a rigorous process. I'll close by saying safety is something that our industry doesn't take for granted, and we never will. For us in the aviation community, our hearts break for the family members. However, we take solace in the fact that there are dedicated professionals, both public and private, that will do everything they can to maintain our tremendous safety record and build on it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Carey, 5 minutes as well. Be sure, everyone, that you're pulling the microphone right up to your mouth. Captain Carey, 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Mr. Graves of Missouri, Chairman DeFazio, Ranking Member Mr. Graves of Louisiana, honorable members of this committee. My name is Captain Daniel Carey. I am a 35-year career pilot at American Airlines. I am also president of the Allied Pilots Association, the largest independent airline pilots union in the world. I also serve as a member of the board of the Coalition of Airline Pilots Associations here in Washington, a trade group representing 32,000 professional airline pilots whose concern is safety and security of the traveling public. The piloting profession is in my family. My father and 2 uncles were fighter pilots in World War II, one of whom lost his life in the service of our nation. My father was an early pioneer with Trans World Airlines, and my daughter pursues a professional career as a commercial pilot today. I'd also like to recognize the family of Samia Stumo, who's here today. God bless you all. Samia was a young woman as well, pursuing her career and young life, and tragically lost her life on ET-302. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, what brings us together today is the tragic accidents of 2 Boeing MAX aircraft. We owe it to those 346 souls and the flying public around the world to make sure these kind of events never happen again. In my 35-year career at American Airlines, I've operated as captain on 5 different types of airplanes, 28 years on Boeing aircraft. I'm here to tell you, Boeing designs and engineers and manufactures superb aircraft. Unfortunately, in the case of the MAX, I'll have to agree with the Boeing CEO. They let the traveling public down in a fatal and catastrophic way. As said here earlier by some of the speakers, we will await the conclusion of the several investigations underway around the world before we determine the final judgment of the MAX disasters. There are a few facts we do know. The MAX was designed to provide the same aircraft feel as the 737. This was intended to minimize cost to Boeing's customers by allowing the MAX to be certified as a 737-typed aircraft. This led Boeing engineers to add the MCAS system. Many mistakes were subsequently made by Boeing, as the MCAS was designed as a federated, not an integrated, aircraft system. As a single port of failure, this design meant that the redundancy of the system went back to the captain and first officer of the aircraft. The huge error of omission was the fact that Boeing failed to disclose the existence of the MCAS system to the pilot community around the world. The final fatal mistake was therefore the absence of robust pilot training in the event of an MCAS failure. The most important issue now is the question of the airworthiness of the MAX aircraft. I believe the Boeing engineers have indeed found the problems to the software issues facing the MAX. And therefore, the redundancies are now embedded in the aircraft in the event of a misfiring of the MCAS going forward. However, at APA, we remain concerned about whether the new training protocol, materials, and methods of instruction suggested by Boeing are adequate to ensure that pilots across the nation and around the world can operate the MAX fleet with absolute and complete safety. In fact, during a meeting with the FAA in April, the FAA officials highlighted a critical checklist that Boeing directed pilots to use to recover the MAX after an MCAS firing. The FAA officials stated that this critical checklist had not been validated since 1967. This is an example of why the APA has integrated into the Flight Standardization Board comments calling for the review, improvement, and training of critical MCAS misfire recovery checklists. I don't have all the answers today, nobody does, but I do have some questions. First, is the FAA sufficiently independent of the manufacturers as to provide legitimately rigorous audit of manufacturing, design, and engineering? Second, should a federated system, which may lead to an unrecoverable event, be certified ever by the FAA? Third, should the FAA aircraft certification, as for example, a 737 designation from 1967, have a timeline or a sunset date? Finally, is the FAA sufficiently equipped to ensure that pilot training protocols are vigorous and robust as aircraft become more and more sophisticated? Mr. Chairman, these are among the questions that I hope this committee examines, and of course, there are many others. Unfortunately, as pilots know, improvements in aviation are too often, written in the blood of the unfortunate victims of these airplane accidents. But all of us, pilots, flight attendants, airline companies, manufacturers, the executive branch of our government, and Congress, owe it to the victims at the highest level of diligence to make sure these kind of accidents never happen again. This is a global aviation crisis of trust and will require global solutions to restore and bolster culture and respect.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
The pilots of the Allied Pilots Association are humbled and proud to be part of this noble cause. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Captain Chelsea B. Sullenberger III for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves, Chairman DeFazio, Ranking Member Graves, and other members of the committee. It is my honor to appear today before the Subcommittee on Aviation. Like Americans and many others around the world, I'm shocked and saddened by these two awful tragedies and terrible loss of life. I just met the parents of 24-year-old Samia Stumo, and I saw in their eyes the incomprehensible immensity of their loss. These crashes are demonstrable evidence that our current system of aircraft design and certification has failed us. These accidents should never have happened. The accident investigations of these crashes will be not completed for many months, but some things are clear. Accidents are the end result of a causal chain of events, but in this case, the chain began with decisions that had been made years before to update a half-century-old design. Boeing added MCAS, but the existence of it was not communicated to pilots until after the first crash. Some have said that even though MCAS software had flaws, the pilots on these flights should have performed better and been able to solve the sudden, unanticipated crisis they faced. Boeing has said that they did not categorize the failure of MCAS as more critical because they assumed that pilot action would be the safeguard. From my 52 years of flying experience and my many decades of safety work, I know that we must consider all the human factors of these accidents and how system design determines how many and what kinds of errors will be made and how consequential they will be. These two recent crashes happened in foreign countries, but if we do not address all the important issues and factors, they can and will happen here. We owe it to everyone who flies, passengers and crews alike, to make sure that pilots will be able to handle an unexpected emergency and keep their passengers and crew safe. But first, we should design aircraft for them to fly that do not have inadvertent traps set for them. I'm one of a relatively small group of people who have experienced such a crisis and lived to share what we learned about it. I can tell you firsthand that the startle factor is real and it's huge. It absolutely interferes with one's ability to quickly analyze the crisis and take effective action. Within seconds, these crews would have been fighting for their lives in the fight of their lives. In both 737 MAX accidents, the failure of a single angle of attack sensor quickly caused multiple instrument indication anomalies and sudden, loud, and in some cases false warnings, creating major distractions, masking the cause, and would have made it even harder to quickly analyze the situation and take effective corrective action. I recently experienced all these warnings in a 737 MAX flight simulator during recreations of the accident flights. Even knowing what was going to happen, I could see how crews could have run out of time before they could have solved the problems. Prior to these accidents, I think it is unlikely that any U.S. airline pilots were confronted with this scenario in simulator training. We must make sure that everyone who occupies a pilot seat is fully armed with the information, knowledge, training, skill, and judgment to be able to be the absolute master of the aircraft and all its component systems and of the situation simultaneously and continuously throughout the flight. As aviation has become safer, we can no longer define safety solely as the absence of accidents. We must do much more than that. We must be more proactive than that. In essence, we must investigate accidents before they happen. We should all want pilots to experience these challenging situations for the first time in a simulator and not in flight with passengers and crew on board. And reading about it on an iPad is not even close to sufficient. Pilots must experience it physically, firsthand. If we don't learn from these crashes, if we just file the findings away on a shelf to gather dust, we will only compound these tragedies. We will make the loss of lives in these accidents even more tragic if we say that these were just black swan events, unlikely to happen again, and decide not to act, and instead just protect the status quo. Only by discovering and correcting the ways in which these tragedies occurred can we begin to regain the trust of our passengers, flight attendants, pilots, and the American people.
Thank you, Captain Schulberg. And now recognize Sarah Nelson, Ms. Nelson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman DeFazio, Ranking Member Graves, Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves, and the entire committee for the opportunity to testify on the issues surrounding the Boeing 737 MAX. As a 23-year flight attendant and international president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, AFL-CIO, representing nearly 50,000 of aviation's first responders at 20 airlines, I am here today because the public looks to flight attendants when it comes to aviation safety. We are aviation's first responders and last line of defense, and we have more public contact and interaction than any other profession within aviation. And the public trusts us to look out for their interests. We are all here today because 346 lives were lost on Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. This hearing room has many people in it who have lost loved ones due to tragedy in aviation. We can see their faces, feel the warmth of their smiles, and try with all our strength to carry on without them. Some days we do this with more success than others. But we also know with certainty that if there was anything at all that we could have done to prevent their lives being cut short, we would do it. This reality is inescapable. We know that aviation safety and security is written in their blood, and we must ensure their sacrifices mean that we fully examine the chain of events that led to their deaths so that this is never repeated. As I stated on March 13th, shortly after the grounding of the 737 MAX, lives must always come first. But a brand is at stake as well, and that brand is not just Boeing, it is America. What America means in international aviation and by extension in the larger world more generally, that we set the standard for safety, competence, and honesty in governance of aviation. Under various agreements between the FAA and other countries or groups of countries, foreign authorities agree to work with the FAA to accept U.S. certification of aircraft and manufactured aeronautical products. This system of international aircraft certification has been built upon global recognition of the FAA and its statutory mandate to maintain safety at the highest possible level. This is now under question, and it means that the FAA must ensure that it has taken all measures to assure the safety of the 737 MAX within the U.S. as well as all countries who must also approve the aircraft for its return to service. Both Boeing and the FAA seem to recognize the need to win back public support and the importance of involving stakeholders in the process. Over the course of the last several months, our union has witnessed a chastened tone from Boeing and what appears to be a real desire to regain trust. This is critically important if remaining questions are to be answered and stakeholders around the world are to be convinced that the 737 MAX is safe to fly. It is significant that the FAA has formed the Technical Advisory Board and that they are engaging the rest of the world and conducting a rigorous review of the software fix and full accounting of human interaction with the functionality of the plane. The fix must be rigorously tested and communicated with utmost transparency and required training. And while this is not an area of expertise for our union, flight attendants must be assured that operators, pilots, regulators, and independent assessment is confident in the safe return to flight. We put our own lives on the line when we return to flight, and we will do so knowing all has been done to ensure safety. We are heartened to receive assurance that Acting Administrator Elwell is working in close coordination with worldwide regulators in returning the MAX to service. Mr. Elwell's time in leadership has not been easy, and yet he is tasked with securing the confidence of regulators around the world and the traveling public, and we need to do all we can to help him. Questions remain, but we believe that the FAA's engagement of all stakeholders is the right leadership approach. We encourage both Boeing and regulators to continue efforts with stakeholders to answer all the questions and communicate fully the lessons learned, along with any necessary changes in procedure. Flight attendants take our role in aviation seriously. And while we're not yet there, we look forward to assuring the public that it is safe to return to flight. We continue to receive questions from the traveling public about the 737 MAX, and there is confusion about the progression of the 737 aircraft models. It's common for crew to receive questions when working the 737 NG about whether or not the aircraft is safe. This signals a fundamental question about the progression of the 737 aircraft models and whether or not the MAX should have been designated as an entirely new aircraft type. And this is the type of question that has to be answered if we can regain public confidence. I should also note that we do not have one question from flight attendants asking when we will regain the flight hours that we have lost with the 737 MAX, because safety is non-negotiable. We believe that we need to take a close look at ODA and the process for certification, and we also think that this committee's work to ensure a review of cabin aircraft certification in the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 is critically important. We believe that funding and ensuring a government shutdown never happens again is critically important, and we support H.R. 1108 to ensure that doesn't happen. Again, we commend this committee for its diligence in promoting aviation safety, and we look forward to the continued leadership from Acting Administrator Elwell in promoting a 737 MAX return to service that inspires confidence among aviation workers, our counterparts around the world, and the traveling public. Thank you.
Thank you. Now recognize.
Hello again, everyone. Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. Hope your Wednesday is going well. I'm trying to jump ahead a day. Let's get you to, this is a news conference that is ongoing. I'm going to play this back for you on tape delay, but this will be New Jersey's Attorney General talking about the state's first major enforcement action against a provider of large capacity weapons. Magazines purchased from New Frontier Armory, you see on the graphic there. Let me roll it back to the start for you, and we'll listen in to the comments here from New Jersey State Attorney General.
Lawfully sold and shipped illegal large capacity magazines, or LCMs, into our state. In New Jersey, we define LCMs as magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. And they're illegal in this state because they enable a mass shooter to fire more than 10 bullets at a time without ever having to stop and to reload. They're illegal in New Jersey because they allow a gang member to shoot up a rival without ever having to stop and to reload. They're illegal in this state because they are contributing to the mass shooting crisis that we are seeing in this country. And they're illegal in New Jersey because they have been used in some of the deadliest and most horrific tragedies in recent history. From Las Vegas to Orlando to Sandy Hook, LCMs have fueled carnage across the country. So with today's action, here in New Jersey, we're showing that we have zero tolerance for these lethal products. And we're sending a powerful message, not just to New Frontier Armory, but also to any other companies that may think about ignoring our laws, that if they make unlawful LCM sales into our state, we will hold them accountable. For over 25 years, it's been illegal in this state to own or to sell large capacity magazines. And in New Jersey for a long time, we defined large capacity magazines, or LCMs, as magazines that can carry more than 15 bullets. But on June 13th of last year, Governor Murphy strengthened New Jersey's LCM restrictions by signing a law that lowered the lawful limit from 15 to 10 rounds per magazine. In doing so, he sought to protect communities, to protect families, to protect our children from the scourge of mass shootings. And to their credit, some of the companies that manufacture and sell these products came into compliance with our new law. They responded quickly and stopped selling unlawful LCMs into our state. But we wanted to do more. We wanted to see what these companies would do when they thought no one was watching them. So we directed our investigators to buy LCMs, or at least try to buy LCMs from these online sellers. And we wanted to see if they would ship into our state. While most of these companies were compliant, one, however, was not. Late last year, our investigators purchased and obtained 3 30-round magazines from New Frontier's website. But we wanted to give them a chance to come into compliance with our laws. So we sent them a cease and desist letter. And to their credit, they responded to our cease and desist letter and said that they would come into compliance with our new laws. And yet, 4 months later, as part of our ongoing enforcement operations, our undercover investigators purchased not only a 15-round large capacity magazine from them, but also a 30-round large capacity magazine, as well as a 100-round large capacity magazine. Let me repeat that. A 100-round large capacity magazine. A magazine that enables someone to shoot 100 rounds without ever having to stop and to reload. In total, during the course of our investigation, we purchased 6 large capacity magazines from New Frontier Armory. And because of its illegal actions, we filed a 3-count lawsuit against New Frontier Armory this morning. Director Rodriguez will go over the penalties, but in broad strokes, we're seeking the maximum civil penalties available. But more than that, we're seeking an order forcing the company to immediately stop selling their products into New Jersey. You see, we intend to hold New Frontier Armory and any other companies who engage in similar conduct fully accountable. And with today's action, we're once again showing this industry across the country that we're not afraid to use our civil enforcement authority and all the tools at our disposal to do so. Because when companies put our residents at risk and violate our consumer protection laws, in New Jersey, we will stand up. And let me tell you why actions like today's make a real difference. This is not the first time that we've led the fight against the sale of unlawful and dangerous weapons online. Last year, the legislature passed a law banning the purchase of ghost guns. And ghost guns, as many of you may know, are guns that are unregistered. They're unserialized. And they're sold without any background checks whatsoever. And just 3 months ago, we arrested 12 men as part of a takedown of a ghost gun trafficking network. We charged them with trafficking ghost gun AR-15 style assault rifles. And here's the thing. During the course of that investigation, we intercepted conversations of those gang members talking to each other. And we intercepted one conversation where they acknowledged that New Jersey had passed strong laws preventing the sale and possession of ghost guns in this state. And they said, we can't ship those parts into New Jersey anymore. We have to send them to Pennsylvania. Those were our laws that caused them to do that. But here's the other thing. When they assembled those weapons after those parts were shipped to Pennsylvania, we were waiting for them here in New Jersey, and we took down that ring. But that's proof that our laws are having an effect. And we took those weapons off the streets, and we'll do the same thing with anyone who tries to circumvent our laws by shipping LCMs into this state or into a neighboring state, or any gang members that tried to circumvent those laws by trafficking these weapons here into New Jersey. Because when the legislature and the governor gives us these tools to fight gun violence, like they did when enacting those new ghost gun laws and LCM restrictions last year, we're committed to using them. Let me also tell you what this case is not. This case is not about going after lawful gun owners. I think all of us in this room can agree. Everyone here, it's common sense. No one needs a 100-round magazine. No one needs the ability to have 100 rounds and to be able to fire them without ever having to stop and to reload. What this is about is common sense. This is about public safety. It's about law enforcement safety. And it's about doing everything we can here in New Jersey to end the scourge of gun violence. Because I think our residents deserve nothing less. Now I'd like to turn it over to the Director of the Division of Consumer Affairs, Paul Rodriguez, who will talk about the details of today's filing. And after that, we'll take your questions. Paul?
Thank you, General. As General Graywall explained, New Jersey has since 1990 banned large capacity magazines. It is not only illegal to sell them, it is also illegal to possess them in New Jersey, meaning someone who buys one is guilty of a fourth-degree crime, punishable by up to $10,000 in fines and 18 months in jail. Despite this, New Frontier Armory advertised and sold LCMs containing up to 100 rounds, all without informing customers that these magazines are illegal to buy in New Jersey. And the company continued to do so even after the Attorney General sent a letter to the company demanding that it stop selling these dangerous and illegal products and warning that he would take action if they continued to sell them in New Jersey. Today, we are following through with that promise. New Frontier Armory's practices constitute a violation of both the New Jersey Consumer Fraud Act and the state's hazardous products regulations, and we will hold them accountable. To conduct our investigation, our investigators reviewed the company's website and determined that 27 out of the 30 magazines the company offered for sale contained more than 10 rounds, some, such as this one, ranging up to 100 rounds. Despite being on notice of our laws, New Frontier Armory's website makes no reference to New Jersey law or the fact that purchasing these products in New Jersey is a crime. What's more, just last month, our investigators made undercover purchases of 3 LCMs, one of which was a 100-round drum magazine for an AR-15 rifle, pictured here. Despite getting an explicit warning from the Attorney General, the company took our order and delivered these dangerous and illegal products to us less than a week after we made our order. We allege that New Frontier Armory violated New Jersey's Consumer Fraud Act by advertising, offering for sale, and actually selling items, possession of which is a criminal offense that can land purchasers in jail. Failing to disclose it is illegal to possess LCMs in New Jersey, falsely stating on its website that the company will cancel shipments to areas where LCMs are prohibited, failing to cease and desist after receiving a warning from the Attorney General, thereby engaging in unconscionable commercial practices, acts of deception, misrepresentations, and knowing omissions of material fact. We further allege that New Frontier Armory violated the hazardous products regulations, which clearly state that it's an unconscionable business practice to advertise, market, or solicit for sale something that is illegal to possess. Based on this, we've asked the court to prevent the company from continuing to put our residents at risk by selling prohibited items, order the company to block sales to New Jersey addresses and place a warning on their website for New Jersey consumers. In addition, we're seeking disgorgement of all funds obtained through illegal sales, and we're seeking the maximum civil penalties of $10,000 per violation and $20,000 per each subsequent violation. We're also seeking recoupment for all of our costs and attorney's fees. As Attorney General Graywall made clear, we will not allow a company that is selling illegal, large-capacity magazines to continue to put our children and families at danger.
You've been watching a news conference in New Jersey where the state's Attorney General is announcing the state's first action against large-capacity magazine sellers, or a seller in particular in this case. Before that, you were watching a congressional hearing about the Boeing 737 MAX crashes and the investigations into those, the relationship between Boeing and the FAA. Among the witnesses there you might have heard was Charles Sullenberger, Sully, the hero of the Hudson plane crash, put down a plane gently into the water and saved the lives of all the passengers and crew. So interesting list of witnesses speaking at that hearing today. Let's get you out to some more national news right now. This is President Trump, of course, last night announced his plans to seek re-election. He jabbed at the press and poked the political establishment. He ran against in 2016 as he kicked off that re-election campaign in Orlando Tuesday night. Fox's Doug Luzader has more from Washington on the president's emerging strategy to win a second term.
President Trump gets down to the business of, well, getting reelected and also funding projects today.
So we had a big rally, and then he's attending a high-dollar event near Miami, and this is after he relaunched his re-election campaign, and it was in Orlando, Doug, to quite a big crowd. We were showing the crowds that were waiting days before.
It's huge. Or huge.
Yeah. A big crowd, and they had a venue there that sat about 20,000 or so, and they expected about 100,000. So they knew there was going to be an overflow situation there. You know, these elections always come down to a handful of states, but the president is clearly banking on Florida to make this happen.
Facing a sea of red hats and thousands of supporters who waited hours for this, the president dove right in.
I stand before you to officially launch my campaign for a second term as President of the United States. Thank you.
This was a signature Trump event. Thousands inside this Orlando arena and more outside. But for all of this turnout, Florida is a state that could be right on the edge, something that even this morning the campaign seemed to acknowledge.
Look, it's no secret to both Democrats and Republicans. Whoever takes Florida has a very good chance of taking the White House.
Now, Florida's track record for picking presidents is indisputable, coming out on the winning side 9 out of the last 10 times. But this recent Florida poll could be problematic for the president, mirroring national numbers that show him well behind top-tier Democrats, some of whom quickly responded to the launch.
Listening to Trump made me feel very much that he is a man living in a parallel universe.
And so, you know, great, he started his election. Some of us have been in the campaign for a while now, and I look forward to meeting him on the debate stage.
And the president, meantime, trying out a new slogan.
You ready? Keep America great.
Yeah, he took a little kind of poll from the stage there, asking the crowd which slogan they liked, that one or the old one. They seem to support the new one. The campaign website, though, still uses the old one, Make America Great Again.
See,
Mike and Alex.
Well, all right. I say it's still 2 years away, right?
Yeah, but you got to get started. You got to get started now.
All right.
Thanks to Fox's Doug Luzader for that report. Let's get you a look at business. Planners is hoping its new product is a shoo-in, and Facebook is getting a taste of the regulatory pushback it will face as it creates a new digital currency with corporate partners. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco has more in today's Morning Business Outlook.
Stocks surging as the Federal Reserve kicked off its two-day policy meeting. President Trump also boosting equities by announcing he will meet with Chinese President Xi at the G20 meeting, easing some Chinese trade war fears. Facebook stock dipping a bit after its big cryptocurrency announcement. Lawmakers are calling for a hearing and a full review of the potential new crypto, Libra, saying this is just another unchecked expansion move by the social media giant. Planters is taking a bite out of the athletic footwear trend. The peanut maker introducing its first limited edition sneaker in more than 100 years. The high top kicks dubbed Crunch Force 1. But if you want to put some crunch in your step, you'll have to shell out $170 a pair. For more, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm Tracy Carrasco.
Thank you, Tracy. Let's get you a look at your weather forecast right now as we look live at the Benjamin Franklin Parkway and out to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Right now, the temperature is 72. The dew point is 69. So it does feel quite humid out there. Winds out of the southeast, but only at 4 miles per hour, so not much of a breeze to speak of. Let's get you a full look at weather here. More of the same today. We're expecting more pop-up storms amid the humid conditions. We've got some cloudy, overcast skies, as you see here on our camera outside our studios at 4th and Market Streets. Let's get you a closer look at Doppler here. Do you see some of those storms out to sea, but we'll have more popping up in the near future. Your current temperatures around the area, 70s almost everywhere except Mount Pocono at 63. As warm as 78 in Wilmington and Wildwood right now. Your northeast temperatures, 60s up in far New England, but mostly 70s along the eastern seaboard or mid-Atlantic. Hot spot is 88 in Miami right now. 80s along the Gulf Coast. 83 and 84 out in Phoenix and Vegas, respectively. 60s on the West Coast. Even warm across the northern plains. Temperatures about where they were yesterday. Like we said, more of the same. Looking pretty similar out there at this moment. Maybe a touch cooler in some places or warmer. Along the shore looks a little bit cooler. 5 degrees cooler in Atlantic City and 4 degrees in Cape May. Wind speeds, single digits most places. Wildwood at 12 miles per hour. Not much to speak of in terms of gusts, but it looks like they are getting a bit of a shore breeze down there today. Visibility, not so great in some places. Good in some. Only 6 miles in Pottstown, 8 in Trenton, 9 in Lancaster, 1 in Mount Pocono. And there you see some of that cloud cover that we have outside. Your futurecast shows you those pop-up storms coming through again today, and then looks like we could see some more on Thursday. Your full 7-day forecast from the Fox 29 Weather Authority. Wednesday, pop-up storms, 82. 7 on our forecast by numbers. Same for Thursday. A little more humid and warmer, 87 with PM storms. Another 7. Friday, summer arrives and the Phillies return home. Summery sunshine, 80 degrees. Looks like we'll go a tick higher, 80 and 8 on our forecast by the numbers. Gets a little more comfortable sleeping at night, 60s for a stretch over the weekend. Saturday, sunny and dry, 80. Sunday, sunny and warm, 83. Monday, shower chance, 87. And Tuesday, another shower chance, 86. So, looks like we'll be mostly dry for the weekend, but shower chances return with the new work week. With all this hit and miss rain, make sure you download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app so you have the latest on conditions at any moment and can see the hourly forecast and futurecast and track the rain as it moves in. All right, let's get you to some local news now. From Cape May County, the NTSB has released its preliminary report on a deadly plane crash, but did not give a definitive cause. In the report, witnesses say they saw the plane flying very close to the water. One witness says the plane hit the water, shot back up several hundred feet, and then crashed back into the water. The pilot who died has been identified as 58-year-old Lawrence Klimek. Happening now in Philadelphia, the Department of Parks and Recreation is using an unconventional approach to reinforcing the summertime curfew. Once curfew starts, tiny speakers at more than 30 playgrounds blast an irritating high-pitched tone that can be heard by most children but not by adults. The sonic technology is called the Mosquito. It's intended to prevent teens and young adults from loitering and vandalizing public parks after hours.
Younger people, younger than me, play around here, they can hear that. I don't think they will like that.
You're not going to stick around?
No.
You're going home?
Yeah.
This kind of annoying sound. Like it sounds like a mouse, but it's hurting my ear.
If you're over the age of 25, you probably won't be able to hear the ringing sound because, according to the science, older folks' ear hairs are dead. We can't play the sound on air, but if you wanted to hear it, we've posted a link to the sound on fox29.com. In Delaware County, the Secret Service is hosting school safety training at Newman University. Today, more than 1,000 teachers, school administrators, counselors, and law enforcement officers will gather for a special presentation. They'll learn about assessing threats, cybersecurity plans, and how to keep kids safe both online and in the classroom. Traffic on Roosevelt Boulevard is about to get slower and hopefully safer. This morning, Mayor Kenney, I believe the update here is that he has actually signed the bill authorizing the use of speed cameras on the boulevard. The new cameras will photograph cars driving 11 miles or more over the speed limit, and that driver will get, at minimum, a $100 fine. The faster you drive, the larger the fine. The cameras are expected to be installed by the end of the year. And according to police, we have another tire slasher on the loose. Philadelphia police say they're looking for this guy. They say he's going around slashing tires on transit police cars. Surveillance cameras caught him in the act earlier this month on Arch and JFK Boulevard in Center City. If he looks familiar, give police a call. That's bold. As they said, they're slashing tires on transit police cars. I'm sure they'd like to catch up with him. All right. Living with sickle cell anemia. In an effort to raise awareness, a local woman joined Good Day Philadelphia this morning to share her journey, which hasn't always been easy. How she's managed to stay positive, refusing to let the invisible disease keep her from living her best life.
Yes, yes.
About to run. We're about to start running real quick.
No,
if she looks familiar, it's probably because you saw her picture posted throughout the city when she ran for the Court of Common Pleas, which is quite an accomplishment when you consider the pain Terry deals with on a daily basis. At 35, she is living life to the fullest despite having sickle cell anemia. While most people start to show symptoms of sickle cell in the first year of their life, Terry's pain began when she was 3. Her mother thought she was simply experiencing growing pains. But years later, at age 11, the North Philadelphia native was diagnosed with this sometimes fatal disease. Fast forward to 2003, the year Terry suffered her first major crisis when she was a sophomore at Loyola College. During that time, she experienced lung failure, kidney failure, and had to have 7 blood transfusions. 2 years later, Terry had a hip replacement surgery. She spent her final semester in rehabilitation, but still managed to graduate with a BA in economics. Her second major crisis took place in 2012, the Friday after she passed the Pennsylvania bar exam. Now a clerk in the city's Register of Wills, Terry says she walks around usually in extreme pain, but determined not to let this invisible disease stop her from living her best life.
It certainly hasn't stopped her. So Terry is joining us here on the couch, and she's also joined by Dr. Roy Gay, a retired hematologist and internist who is an authority on sickle cell disease. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Terry, you're amazing.
Thank you.
How does the pain manifest itself?
Well, you usually have a crisis, and it's because the blood, the sickled cells get stuck in places, and usually it's in joints and things like that. But for me, it takes place first in my legs. I always have it.
And you mentioned, what kind of pain is it?
It's like when someone is squeezed, like if you someone squeezed you in, but you can't see it on the outside, it's just inside.
Wow. And that's why it's called the invisible disease. Right?
Yes.
Because if someone were to look at you, they wouldn't know what you're going through.
Exactly.
But you told me in commercial break you're even in pain right now?
Yes.
Where does it hurt?
My legs. My legs hurt right now.
Yeah.
Yes, and my back.
Doctor, what is it?
Well, sickle cell disease is an inherited disease, and it's an abnormality of the red cells. The red cells, when they lose oxygen, they start to sickle, and those sickles become really rigid and get blocked in the blood vessels, and they stack on top of each other, and therefore you get no oxygen to the particular areas that you're supposed to get it, and they develop pain, which is called a crisis. Yes.
And so what we're looking at right now, this is the sickle cell on the right compared to what a normal red blood cell is.
Correct.
Well, how do you, we want to take her pain away. Is there no cure?
Well, the pain treatment has been the standard for the last 35 years, and that has been Tylenol or Motrin. Then as it gets more severe, then we use things like opiates, which has become a major controversy now.
Yes. Now, I know Terry's case, like Mike mentioned in the story, that she found out when she was a little older at 3. But in a lot of cases, you can tell when people are just babies. What are some of the symptoms that people should be looking out for?
Well, what we do is we do newborn screening on everyone, and that's 50 states have that. Okay. So you can diagnose it at birth. But usually the kids don't manifest their first crisis until about 6 months of age.
Is this something that parents would pass on?
Yes, it's an inherited disease, and it has to be the mother and the father has to pass on the abnormal gene to
so a parent could know before they have a child that this could be a possibility.
Absolutely, yes.
But the African-American community?
Well, that's the misnomer. 75% of the cases are African or African descent, but we do see high cases in Italy, in Greece, in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia. Well, probably because of slave trade and probably migration from Africa, West Africa, to other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So it's on all 4 continents.
Yeah.
Right. And high malaria concentrated areas.
Well, I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
You are amazing.
You've gotten a lot done.
Yes.
I try.
What would you want people to know at home about sickle cell that you think a lot of people don't know?
We are in pain, and our pain is real. Even though we live with it our whole lives, so we cope very well. So you learn, you have to, or else you will, you'll stay in the bed forever. So.
Do you ever have a day that you don't have pain?
No.
Oh.
Wow.
No, there's not one day.
And look at all the things you've gotten accomplished in your life.
And the smile you still have on your face.
Because God is good.
44% of patients are in pain all the time.
Oh my God.
All the time.
Oh, good to meet you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're amazing.
Yes, you are.
God.
Accomplished so much.
All right, here's a break.
Oh, we do have information, though, about a walk that's coming up.
Oh, that's right.
The 22nd annual Walter E. Brandon Sickle Cell 5K Walk Run. It's in September, so mark your calendars. Don't forget about this. It's Saturday in September. It's September 28th, and it's going to be at Belmont Avenue, Avenue of the Republic. So.
We'll remind you when we get closer.
Okay.
We'll be back.
All right, thank you to them for joining us this morning. Avoiding summer brain drain. Camps and sports aren't enough. Parents, the best tools to keep your kids' brains busy while they're away from school.
Well, most of the kids are out of school. Some Jersey kids still have to go a little bit more this week. But now the kids are out there. You don't want them just laying around the house doing nothing. Got to keep their brain active.
So, you know who could help us with that?
Steve Noviello.
Yes.
Steve.
Good morning to you guys. Yeah, you know, we're talking about keeping the brain active in a fun and educational way. The best part, some of these toys start at less than $10. So let's get right to it, okay? The first company we're talking about is acrosstheboardgame.com. So whether it's an age-old game of Mancala, which teaches counting, or games like Solitaire that promote reasoning and strategy, these are not only fun, but durable too. Each one is handcrafted and really beautifully made. All right, next up, this was one of our favorite ones, okay? This is from a company called Insect Lure. It's their 50th anniversary butterfly farm. Take a look at the video we've got for you. You can watch all 4 phases of metamorphosis because the kit comes with everything you need. A couple live caterpillars, a pop-up habitat, comes with all the food that you need to grow your caterpillars into butterflies. We did this over the course of a few weeks, so this is a nice extended play moment for kids. We've actually got video right now on my Instagram of the butterflies that we hatched. A really good time. All right, back out here live. This is the Electro Dough Kit from a company called Tech Will Save Us. The neat thing about this, you've got to go into the kitchen with mom and dad to make the conductive dough first. Then you can use it and form it into different shapes and then add things like buzzers and lights and switches to really learn all about conductivity. This is from Busy Bee. It's their mag stick wheel set. So this is all about teaching kids the mystery of magnetic force, right, and how it all works. The nice thing about this, they're magnetic, so great for travel. And in fact, this particular company is the only one to offer this sturdy magnetic playboard. So even if you're in the car with the kids, right, they can still be in the back seat building stuff because they've got this nice playboard to use as a foundation. This is 3 up, 3 down. It's only $9.99. The goal, get rid of your cards before family and friends can. The surprise, though, 3 cards not revealed until the very end, so you're going to need both strategy and luck. This is a great family game for up to 6 players. And finally, take a look at this. A great regular laptop with 4 gigs of onboard memory and an all-day battery. But this is Hack, the laptop that teaches kids to code. It's got included hacking software, and we've got some video for you, to help kids 8 and older learn to code and develop creative problem-solving skills through gameplay. It was named the Best First Laptop by Parents Magazine and Best STEM Toy by Wired. Links to all the toys we showed you and the ones we didn't have a chance to get to right now, facebook.com/SaveMeSteve, and of course, on your station website.
I want the butterfly thingy.
It's so cool.
And what was the name of the game?
Cool.
The marbles and counting? I used to play that all the time, but I forgot the name of it. Mancala. Yes, I love that game. I used to play it for hours.
Mancala.
Yes.
Yep.
It's fun.
Okay, I'm getting the butterfly. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Why don't we...
Thank you to Steve Noviello there from Fox 4 in Dallas-Fort Worth for joining us and providing some ideas. I saw a couple there I might like for my own kids. And last but not least, one more story from Good Day Philadelphia this morning before we go. Co-sleeping controversy. Is it okay to sleep in bed with your baby? Doctors are against it. Some families say it works for them. Here's the conversation from this morning.
When it comes to raising your child, everyone has an opinion.
Yes.
Even though they probably keep it to themselves sometimes.
Well, so you have to figure out what's going to be right for you, your family, your beliefs, and what you think, and your doctor, certainly having that conversation as well. So here's the big issue that we saw this article. It was on the topic of co-sleeping, and it got us talking about this one.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is, the article, and it said, people that do, people that don't, and what you think about this one. So we wanted to bring in an expert to talk about co-sleeping. Her name is Salima McNeil, a mom, a therapist, the founder of a nonprofit that does great work. Is it the Oshun Family Center? Oshun Family Center.
Oshun.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hello.
So right off the top of your head, is it okay? Is co-sleeping okay?
Yes, so I'm a fan of co-sleeping, not bed sharing. So co-sleeping is sleeping in the same room with your child, having a pack and play or a co-sleeper next to the bed somewhere in the room, not necessarily bed sharing. And not for the conventional reasons, as a lot of the research reports, it's like, oh, you're going to roll over and smother your baby. Right. But more so, parents don't get a good night's sleep when their kid's in the bed. They have feet in their bag, they have, the women tend to sleep lighter when their baby's in the bed because you're so prone to all the sounds that your kid makes.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So co-sleeping, yes, bed sharing.
We did a story about a month ago that said it's a really good idea to share the bedroom with a child at least up to 1 year of age.
Correct.
Would you go higher than that?
No, because at that point in time, their sleep can be disturbed for certain reasons, and they're just more comfortable, you know, being in an environment where it's just their environment, and you can put on a sound machine, and they don't have to go to sleep to their parents snoring.
Karen, how often do your boys crawl into bed with you?
I have an unusual situation. So I should have stopped once they got to be 1 or 2. So I still have kids in my bed, but I get up in the middle of the night. So it's a different scenario. Like, I'm not a normal person. And I did have babies in my bed with me. I did nurse them for a long time, so they would be there. And so, I mean, that was my personal comfort. I know that's not the recommendation from many doctors and everybody, but I'm a huge fan, at least of having your baby in your room, so you can get up when you hear them cry and they're right there. And you're not like constantly having to wake up to a full wake up, especially if they're in like a little co-sleeper. Right. You can just pull them over.
Absolutely.
What did you do in your situation?
So my son is 13, and we did a bit of bed sharing once he got to be a little older, maybe like 9, 10 months. I breastfed him till he was about 13 months, and so it was easy for me to get him and just put him in the bed with me to feed him and then put him back.
You know,
at
in
some
other
point in time.
countries, kids sleep in the same bed with their parents for a long time. You know, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of age. I know my little granddaughter Teddy got into her parents' bed a lot. What's the downside? Are we damaging them somehow?
No.
Seems like nurturing and cuddling to me.
Right. So a little disclosure of myself. I slept with my mom for a really long time. And it took her so many tries to get me out of her room. So for me, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want my kid to be 12 and still wanting to sleep with me. So I was a little more hyper-vigilant with like making sure he had his own sleep space and knowing that I was there for the nurturing, but also that he had his own space.
Well, also the doctor.
Well, isn't also because of SIDS too? The concern about SIDS. That's why they say also room sharing is important, but not necessarily occupying the bed.
Correct. So if you have your child in the room, you're there closer to tend to their needs and to check on them, because a lot of new moms and new parents will get up in the middle of the night to check just to see if their child is breathing. So it's not, you know, the fear mongering that goes on a lot with you're going to roll over and smother your baby, but it's also like the fluffiness of the pillows and the comforter and all those other factors, because if they're in a co-sleeper, it's just a fitted sheet and maybe a knapsack.
And they even had an interesting thing they were saying, you should, if you, like your spouse is already sleeping, don't just put the baby in the bed and then go to sleep. Like a lot of times if a parent just knows, hey, there's a baby in the bed with me, that might stop you from moving around as much. And be more conscious of it.
And some of the studies that you guys are referring to on one of the pictures is of the dad sleeping here, the mother in the middle, and then the baby on the side of mom. So that goes to your point, like if dad is already asleep or the other partner is already asleep, then you wouldn't want to put the baby in the middle.
You're that barrier.
Right.
So,
Well, 2 things. You're really good.
Thank you.
On TV. That was really, and that's a huge wedding ring. That was
blinded.
Thank you so much. And also the doctors do recommend that you, I just want to point out that you don't, especially if you're drinking alcohol, doing drugs, a number of weight, and it's important to say because that is the recommendation. They want you back to sleep and in a separate area.
Because that might affect your sleeping. You might sleep heavier and you might not be as aware.
Could kill the baby, and women have been charged in that scenario, and you would never want that to happen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you to our guests for talking about that topic there. That's it for us today. We're going to sign off for the day. You see the cloud cover there. Keep an eye on the sky, as we do have the chance for more pop-up storms today and tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on Fox 29 News Now. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.